This is a major scale lesson. The first thing we're going to do is talk about the difference, or review the difference between a half step and a whole step. A major scale is made up of a bunch of halves and wholes. So if we start on C, remember a whole step is skipping a note. So from C to D is skipping a note. You've skipped this guy right here. You skipped the C sharp. Okay. So let's do it again. Let's go to a different note. Let's start on A. So if we go from A here to B, we've skipped this note in the middle. So that's a whole step. So remember, when you're doing this, a whole step, whole, is a skip. So you skip a note. It's very important. A half step, it's called note to note. Where this can get tricky is at B and C, and E and F. So here's C, and we're going to B. There's no note right here, so you might think you're skipping a note, but you're not. There's no pitch right there. So from B to C, this is a half step, because there's no skip, and it's a smiley face. The same thing happens on F and E. So E to F, that's a half step, because there's no note to skip. If we went from E to F sharp, we've skipped this note. So from E to F sharp, from red to red there, that is a whole step. From E to F, that's a half step, or from F to F sharp is a half step. If you have problems with this, do not go on in this lesson. There's another lesson I have about the musical alphabet, and check that out. Alright, the major scale pattern. The major scale pattern is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now, a way to remember this is if you look at a keyboard, a piano keyboard, or can imagine one in your head, you can see it right here. Whole, whole, and then call this space the half. Whole, 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 and then the half. That's just a visual way to remember it. So whole, whole, half step, whole, 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 half step. So what does that mean? How does that work? So I'll show you first, and then we'll actually listen to it in a second. So here's C. So we're going to go up a whole step from C. So that skips that note, goes to D. We're going to go a whole step, so we skip that note to E. Then our next part's a half. So I'll do a half in blue. So let's review. So our first pitch, here's number 1. We go a whole step from 1 to 2. And then a whole step from 2 to 3. And then a half step from 3 to 4. There's no note that we're skipping. And then we repeat this process. So we have another whole step to 5, whole step to 6, so we've skipped this note, whole step to 7, skip that note, and then there's a half step between 7 and 1. So we repeat the 1 again. You could call it 8 if you wanted to. I think that's confusing. Oops. So we've got 5, whole step to 6, whole step to 7, half step to 1. So we'll review the whole thing. Here's your pattern. If you need to, you can always take a snip using the snipping tool and put these notes into your own notes. If you wanted to, you could think of this as 1 whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, because the root of the scale, or the 1, so those are the same thing. I'll add that to the notes real quick. Root equals 1. When you start on the root, that's not a whole or a half. It's neither. It's just where you start. So you have 1, then you have a whole step to 2, whole step to 3, half step to 4, whole step to 5, whole step to 6, whole step to 7, half step to 1. And that works in any key. At this point, if you don't understand what's going on, stop the video, rewind and review until you understand. So this is going to start at C here. We have root, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half step. So I'll do the scale again, you can just hear it. And that works anywhere. So if I started on A, that's my root, go to the whole step, skip this note because I'm going to the whole step, then a half, whole whole step, skip, whole step, skip this note from here, whole step, half. This major scale formula works on any key, so we'll do it in B flat. Here's your root, whole step, whole, half, whole, half. This is from virtualpiano.net. This is really easy to find and use. Instead of pitch names, you can call things by the scale degrees, and it's just 1 through 7 back to 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And that works in any key. It's an easy way to communicate with other musicians is using what's called scale degrees. It's just putting a numerical value on a major scale. And then it helps to know where the half steps are. So between 3 and 4 is where the half steps are, and between 7 and 1. So it's a half step between 3 and 4, and 7 and 1. So you need to know both the formula over here and where the half steps fall inside the major scale. And if you play on this little virtual piano, you'll hear where those half steps are. So 1, 2, 3, between 3 and 4 is the half step. 5, 6, 7, half step. So between 3 and 4, and 7 and 1. That's what makes the scale sound like a major scale. If I only did whole steps, it would sound like you're asleep. Steps is what's called a chromatic scale. Stay tuned for part 2.